So this was one of those games where did the Cavs win or did the Raptors lose? And I think you can make a fair point for either one of them. How should both of these teams, CC, feel after last night's game?
You can absolutely. But from a feeling standpoint, Toronto, they have to feel horrible. Now, you talking about getting Cleveland. We know the history there. Going into this game, had lost 6 straight in the playoffs in a humiliating fashion. At the end of the season, where Toronto was playing the best basketball that we've seen this play over this stretch, this tenure with this team, they got smashed by the Cavs. In 2 games that meant everything to Toronto, didn't mean anything to Cleveland, they got smashed. Cleveland just came through the most difficult series that we've seen, them not going against some type of championship caliber team and struggling with the Pacers in 7 games, no rest. They put in the game plan. That's a 24-hour game plan, all right? Ty Lue, they were watching film yesterday. He decided, you know something, the team was locked in. He saw it in their eyes after an hour of watching film. That's all they did. They had a walk-through shoot-around. That's all they did. So for me, what I saw was, because what I thought the Cavs was lacking was, forget continuity, but they missed training camp. After they went on the great stretch of basketball early, guys got injured. Guys got traded. They went through a lot of turmoil. They need these games. They needed that 7-game series with the Pacers to be able to come together and the other guys start to play. So from Toronto's standpoint, this to me is one of the biggest losses in the franchise history. Home court advantage, everything, rest. I mean, you got the matchups, and you still can't get past the Cavs when LeBron doesn't play great. You can't forget that part.
Right. LeBron said it was one of his worst games, maybe my worst game of the year. And you lose. You have a double-digit early lead, and you lose. You're rested. They're exhausted. You have home court. They don't. You're the healthiest team in the playoffs. And you miss 11 straight shots to finish the game. In the final 4 minutes of the game, LeBron makes 2 baskets. Your team makes 0. This is, you mentioned.
They missed at least 10 at the rim.
CC, in the fourth quarter, how about 13? They were 3 of 16 inside 5 feet. That's the length of this desk. This was one of those losses you mentioned in the regular season where the Raptors playing great, Cavs weren't, but the Cavs won. I talked about that was a worst-case scenario loss for the Raptors because that was a game they had a huge halftime lead. The Raptors were feeling great, and all of a sudden, LeBron and the Cavs came back and ended up stealing that game. I think it was 132-129. Well, this is another worst-case scenario loss for Toronto.
Yeah, the only way it could really be worse for them, Nick, is if one of their star players had gotten hurt.
Agreed. Absolutely. Barring injury, it could not have been worse. Like, if LeBron goes out and does what he did in Game 7, if LeBron has 40 points and is dominating the game, or by the way, if it was the way they lost last year against the Raptors in the playoffs, the Cavs hit 35 more 35 more three-pointers than Toronto. If the Cavs just had a lights-out, oh, my God, shooting night.
Yeah, but that wasn't possible this year, Nick, because we've changed our offense. We have perimeter shooters. Like, our three-point shooting's going to be better.
Oh, for Toronto, right. Yes. You're not going to have that discrepancy.
But that's why it was less what Cleveland did and more what Toronto didn't do. And you wonder if just seeing LeBron out there when usually he's at his best, if that just froze this Toronto team, and all of a sudden they were like, well, we don't win these games. We're probably not going to win this game, and then no shots.
We can blame it on whatever we want, but there's some clear examples as far as not being able to finish in the paint. They dominated the glass. They dominated in the paint. But losing a possession after a timeout on a 5-second violation, Kyle Lowry throwing the ball in over LeBron. You know LeBron's guarding him. Like, why would you have him throw the ball in? You just calling a timeout. Put a taller person out there that has a height advantage, or at least it's neutral. They negate each other. Like bad coaching at the end, wasting timeouts. Like so they didn't have a timeout.
The biggest shot of your season. Fred VanVleet's been an awesome story. A potential 6th Man of the Year candidate.
Yes.
He was injured.
With what?
With a right shoulder injury. He's a right-handed shooter. He hadn't played in the fourth quarter. Let's have our biggest shot of the season come down to Fred VanVleet. All of it was unforgivable by Toronto. And listen, one of the reasons I believe, CC, that the Pacers were a bad matchup for the Cavs. There's a lot of X's and O's stuff, but it's also because their best player, Victor Oladipo, doesn't have any bad experience against LeBron. When he played in the East, his team was terrible, never made the playoffs. Played a year in OKC. He's never played LeBron in the playoffs. He went into that series saying, you know what, I'm going to play the best player in the world as close to even as possible.
Well, because the one thing also he can do is because we know from LeBron going back to Derrick Rose when he was in his prime.
Yeah.
When they put LeBron on that point guard late in the game, which we saw last night, he did to Kyle Lowry, shut him down. Yeah. They can't do that to Oladipo because he can beat LeBron off the dribble.
He's too fast.
And that's the disadvantage. There's some other things as far as the Pacers, them being a younger team, and they do some things that give Cleveland problems, but talent-wise, Toronto is far more talented.
Agreed. The point that I'm making on Oladipo is Oladipo, we were talking at halftime. I said if the Cavs had a lead at halftime against the Pacers, you felt the entire second half the Cavs were just desperately trying to hold on for dear life. They were down 3 at half against the Raptors. LeBron walking off the court, shaking his head, yes, feeling confident. There was no mental block from Oladipo. Yeah. I've never beat this guy. How do I beat this guy?
I think also,
that exists with Toronto.
That initial burst that you know you're going to get being there in Toronto, that energy, how well the team played early. They were down 14 to be able to get it back at 3. Yes, you could see that. Good. We were talking on the phone there. You were like, yeah, but even if I could see what you're saying now because of the history. Man, and the history, even that the Cavs, these younger Cavs player, because what LeBron did in the last month of the season against the Raptors.
Not to mention the fact the Cavs never led during regulation.
Yes.
To win a game or to beat Toronto and to lose a game where your opponent never led during regulation is something else. How deflating is this for them moving forward? How much more of an advantage do the Cavs have looking ahead now?
Listen, I thought the Cavs had a distinct advantage over Toronto going into it because of the matchups, because of the history, because the Raptors don't have anyone you can even throw at LeBron. But the only way the Raptors had a shot in this series to me was if the games, the 50-50 games, they got to win them. And this wasn't a 50-50 game. This was a 75-25 Raptors game.
Yeah.
And they lost it. You mentioned, this is only the second time in 20 years a team has lost a playoff game without ever trailing in regulation. It doesn't happen. And the Raptors got to sit on that and deal with that tonight, headed into tomorrow.
The only thing that keeps me from being overly optimistic is I've seen the Cavs. I'm still concerned about their support or lack of support of LeBron. Now, he got that last night. But Kevin Love didn't score. I mean, in a game that we need him, doesn't get in double figures. So I'm like, okay, now the game number 2 is vitally important. We understand that. But I know if they get it to 1-1, I know Toronto can beat them one game in Cleveland because this is Cleveland team. They're still a Jekyll and Hyde. LeBron will pick up his play, though. That's what they really should be concerned about game 2 and moving forward.
And on a night where LeBron called it arguably the worst game of his career between
the season.
Yeah, a little drama in that. A little drama in that,
He accounted for 59 points last night. I hope he just plays like a medium game next time for game 2. CC, how much are Kevin Love's struggles going to ultimately affect this team? I mean, can they work through it? Can they work past it if a couple guys here and there step up like they did last night?
I mean, this is the Cavs team or a version of the Cavs team that we've seen before. Now, the names and everything have changed, but this is the only time we've seen LeBron where he didn't have to play spectacular for them to be able to win a game. They typically have gotten some bench support. Yeah, they got that from Tristan Thompson, and they got it from Jeff Green. Man, they need some starting support, shooting outside. JR and Cal Court, man, they showed up. They played the best basketball. Collectively, those 4 players that we've probably seen all season. And they had to win in overtime. So if LeBron doesn't play at that level, which you have to expect every once in a while, where is Kevin Love and what he's going to do? Now, my expectation for Kevin Love, they not real high. Like, I don't have it. Nick had high expectations for him in game number 1. They're trying to run a lot of sets to start the game through Kevin Love. But to me, it is what it is. He's not very athletic. All right, he is not a knockdown shooter. And to me, he don't look like he's going to take the initiative that he would take 20 shots. Like, he goes through a period of 5 or 6 minutes where he likes to be aggressive. Late in the game where they had him isolated, a lot like Boston did, where they moved the ball in Philadelphia till they got the matchup. The Cavs did that for Love last night. He had DeMar DeRozan on him.
Take advantage.
He couldn't do nothing with him. So, no, I don't expect Kevin Love. That's why I expect the Cavs to continue to struggle. If Kevin Love starts playing at the all-star level, it might change my opinion on the Cavs and their ability to advance beyond the Eastern Conference Finals.
Listen, the reason they need Kevin Love to be better is Jeff Green's not going to go 4 for 4 very often. Like Jeff
was
Green,
ISOing Jeff Green.
Right, Jeff Green all of a sudden, he didn't miss a shot. He was 4 for 4 from the field, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. That's the best game Jeff Green will have this series. Put it in the bank. Like, that's the best he will play. I know Kyle Korver says he was 5 of 12 from 3, and technically that's true. But he also had 2 toe-on-the-line threes. So he was 7 for 14 from deep.
Yes.
Just 2 of them he only got 2 points for. Like, Kyle Korver might have one more game at that level in this series. JR, hot and cold like soup. Like, yeah, I mean, we don't know which JR we're going to get.
He was sensational.
Now, you know who I do feel like we can rely on in this series? Guy who probably should have played more, especially to start the third quarter yesterday, Tristan Thompson. When Jonas Valanciunas was eating him up. Like,
yes.
Tristan Thompson came in. Ty Lue did some odd things last night. He put in Tristan Thompson right when Valanciunas was coming out of the game. I don't quite understand that. We have 15 years of data that LeBron plus 4 shooters is unguardable. At one point, he had out there in a critical moment in the fourth quarter, LeBron plus your 4 worst shooters. It was LeBron plus Tristan plus Jeff Green, Rodney Hood, and Jordan Clarkson. Like, what the hell lineup is that? I don't know, but they were able to win despite all of that. But that's not sustainable, because Kevin Love has to be better. I said, you're right. Like, I had pegged LeBron's stat line almost to the number last night, but it almost gets erased because I said, Kevin Love, there's no chance, CC, Kevin Love is as bad in this series as he was in round 1. I guess maybe I was right, because he was actually worse. He wasn't as bad. He was worse. The worst game Kevhan Love's had in the postseason.
The only reason why you were right was because
I was so wrong. Like, I was so wrong, like, it met me on the other side of it. He had trouble just grasping rebounds. There was a critical moment late in the game where he had a rebound, just rolls off his face and out of bounds.
Yes. That was before he got the foul called the elbow.
Exactly right. Like, I don't know how much that torn tendon or that strained tendon is bothering him in his left hand.
That don't help his jumping ability.
No, and it doesn't help. Like, he seems like a guy that's totally, his confidence is shattered.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.